Well, the Senate expected to pass its health care reform bill tomorrow morning, and then it heads back to the House where they're going to try to hammer out some sort of compromise bill. The president would like to sign this compromise bill before a State of the Union address. That's what we understand. Will it happen? What will the final bill actually look like? Joining us now in studio is Fox News contributor and former White House press secretary Dana Perino, and the vice president of New York University's Langone Medical Center, Andrew Rubin, as well as Alan Murray. Of course, the Wall Street Journal stays on set with us. Andrew, we talk about this health care reform as a monumental shift to the way that we do business in health care. What's your take on that?
Oh, it's monumental. It's a $1 trillion bill. We're going to be insuring 30 million Americans who haven't had insurance beforehand. And we're looking at how and we're paying for that with new taxes, and we're going to look at how we deliver care on the cost side. So there are going to be some changes in actually the delivery of care.
And have you seen some of those changes happen already in the anticipation of this?
It's a little early because the bills are still, still have to be reconciled, and you don't want to change things before you know what's going to happen. But we've started meeting and talking about how we're going to actually manage, our payment system from the hospital and doctor perspective in the future by looking at episodic, care, delivery of care, where a hospital and doctors are paid a bulk payment to manage the entire illness of a patient, which is very new.
Better for the consumer?
I think maybe, maybe not. I think it's better for the economy and it's better for health care, and I think it's just going to take a long time to figure it out and get there. It's very complicated stuff.
It certainly is, Alan. You were making the point, though, for the consumer on the health care side, we are going to be insuring Americans that haven't received insurance before. Is what is good for the consumer, the general American consumer out there, also good for the markets?
Well, I think that's a good question. I mean, look, you've got two goals, two big goals. One is to extend coverage to those 30 million people. The other is to do something about out-of-control health care costs. Now, I don't know, Andrew, if you gave this bill a grade on each of those goals, what would it be? My sense is it does much better in terms of extending coverage than it does on doing anything about controlling health care costs.
What is your grade on that?
Well, obviously, insuring 30 million new Americans, you got to give that an A, unless you're looking at how we're going to pay for that, and then you got to say, well, then what is the grade become? On the cost side, listen, there's a lot of work to do. It's very complicated. I think the bill puts the mechanisms in place. Whether or not this country's ready for it and we can actually do something with it, it's going to be hard to tell. I'm going to give it a B minus right now.
It's almost an incomplete, right?
It's
kind of a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction.
$1 trillion. Okay, let's take a step back here. We keep talking about 30 million people who are uninsured now who are going to be insured. I am for that. But I also want to know, why is the media glossing over a key number in the Congressional Budget Office report, which says 23 million people remain uninsured? So who are the 23 million? I thought we had 31 million who were uninsured. Then it was 47 million, remember? And then there was the July comment. Oh, and then they ratcheted it back. It was 30 million. So those numbers are confusing.
Sure, but for the White House perspective, it doesn't seem like the numbers are that important. And we hear from,
but is that the problem?
Well, the president has said, though, that, listen, this bill is not perfect. The numbers are not perfect. None of this is perfect. But once it gets passed, it's going to be, all right, we're going to fix it.
Does anyone really believe that?
Well, that's the question. What do you think that's
setting
the president up for? As a press secretary, someone from the White House, what is that setting up the president for?
Well, if I were in the communications office of the current White House, I would be concerned that on Monday they had their president, our president, go out and give a statement about how great it was for the deficit reduction. And he quotes the Congressional Budget Office. And within 2 hours, the Congressional Budget Office comes out with a restatement of its findings and said, oh, whoops. We actually overcounted, but we missed $500 billion, half $1 trillion more of what it's going to cost. Who knows what else is in this bill? In addition to that, it's all based on a false premise. They say they're going to pay for this, in more taxes.
Sure.
The carve-outs for the unions are pretty disgusting. Then you have a claim that they're going to cut doctors' pay next year by 21%. Every year, Congress says they're going to do this. They never do it.
So
how are we really going to pay
attention to the numbers? I mean, we're a part of the media. What's wrong with us if those numbers are
Well, you're talking about 10-year budget projections in a very complex bill. Nobody's numbers are going to be close to right. None of us know how the numbers are going to work out.
To Dana's point?
No, I think that's an issue. I think the more serious problem here is that it's being passed through Congress on a purely partisan vote, which means it's unstable. It doesn't matter what the 10-year numbers say, because this thing's going to be changed 5 times in 10 years, if not 10 times in 10 years.
There was a break.
And there's a great deal of uncertainty still out there about how this gets to your point, Andrew, how this really is going to shake out, what the medical business is going to look like 10 years from now.
In addition to that, I think they have I'm not a doctor, I'm not an economist, I'll leave that to the these guys. But I think from a political standpoint, you mentioned that they're going to try to get this done and signed by President Obama by the State of the Union. There was a story today, I would say loosely sourced, but kind of interesting, coming out of Politico, that they might wait until February to try to get this done. And I think that is politically very dangerous for them, because I think they're misunderestimating, which is a great President Bush word, the public's revulsion of the so-called compromises or bribes, however you want to call it, Senator Nelson's being the most egregious. Just like Republicans in Ellen, tell me if you think I'm right on this, Republicans underestimated the public's revulsion about earmarks in 2006, and they paid a heavy political price for it.
How important?
I mean, well, look, I think it's disgusting, but as you know, it's been a part of every major piece of legislation.
But so were earmarks.
And I think earmarks.
And people finally reacted and did something about it when we lost a lot of seats in 2006. And I think your
point, Dana, is that this is not a partisan sin. This is the way the sausage gets made right now. It's very ugly, and I think people aren't going to like it. But I don't know that that causes a massive uprising against Democrats.
I don't know. We'll see.
What I'd say, 16% of the economy is health care, and the current trends are unsustainable. And no bill that's trying to address 16% of the economy is going to get it right on the first time. And the reality is we're going to have to make a lot of tweaks to this bill in future Congresses, because there's going to be a lot that comes out of it.
On this, just around the horn real quick, Alan, when do you think we actually see a final version, compromise bill?
Oh, end of January.
End of January? Dana, when do you think?
I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think there's a real potential they don't get this done.
Ever?
Not this year, no.
What do you think?
Not next year.
Not next year, right.
The momentum's been with the president by the State of the Union. He's hit every deadline that he's really set for himself. I can't see it, not passing by them.
I think they have to do it. I agree. The Democrats have convinced themselves that they have to do this, or they are destroyed.
But do they have to? I mean, is that a fair point?
They're going politically, I think they have to.
Okay, well, we're going to hold you all to what you said. Bring it all back. Good. And have some sort of
I have no consequences.
It's nice to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Not so much Brown and Andrew. Okay, great to have